I would like to see tangible and immediate action to come out of COP26, not just vague promises to do something in the future.
We need more kinds of openings around the processes of development, around the procedures to agree on what development goals are, incorporating the voices from the Global South more rather than just kind of parachuting them into this meeting, but really kind of bringing their voices in more centrally.
The thing I'd like to see come out of COP26 is ambitious targets and then a roadmap for achieving those.
I'd like to see many positive outcomes, but would be really pleased to see the advancing of the Paris Rulebook.
An emphasis on equity and partnerships between countries, an emphasis on thinking about appropriate development, so reducing dependencies on carbon-based energy and mineral consumption for development, the assumption that that's what development needs to be. So thinking about kind of reconceptualizing what development is and what demand is, moving away from energy-intensive growth paradigms.
I would like to see the rule book at COP26 include refining the global stocktake, resolving disagreements over Article 6, avoiding the double counting of carbon units, agreeing on transparency and governance processes, and establishing a common time frame.
This may be politically very naive, but I think what I'd like to see is some mechanism by which governments can hold one another responsible for the policies that they're making and the impacts of those policies.
I think we need strong leadership. We need commitment from wealthy countries in terms of reducing their carbon emissions.
There'd be an important emphasis on China and its role as this really rapidly growing and emerging economy, as on the one hand, an important locus of the global energy transition, but on the other hand, it has this great role in terms of extraction in different parts of the world, resource-backed loans and debt trap and land acquisition on a large scale. All these issues have been receiving increased attention over the past decade, but I think I would hope to see that that's highlighted and that high-level delegations from China are at the COP26. I mean, it's important to note that I think China has pushed back its plans for net zero to 2050 or so. So it would be good to see that they've agreed to move those forward.
One thing I'd like to see coming out of COP26 is a real focus on climate justice, with the highest emitting countries like the UK taking on greater responsibility and supporting other nations which are least responsible for this crisis but facing the greatest climate impacts.
Something that must come out of COP26 is for developed countries to honour their commitments to raising $100 billion per year for climate action in developing countries.
And greater financial commitment to support poorer countries to allow them to develop, for example, in greener ways, and as they do that, they can avoid higher emissions.
The target was not met last year, but it absolutely has to be met in years going forward.
I think it's important to think about closing some of the loopholes on vast amounts of wealth, like we've seen with the I think it's the Pandora Papers that have just come out, which are in continuation of the Panama Papers. So people say, well, how do you pay for this? But there are these vast amounts of wealth being stashed away, and so I think we need to think about closing these kind of loopholes.